So, have you ever wondered what it might be like to go RVing in the winter? Well, let me tell you, it is 16 degrees out here. The winds are gusting up to 20 miles an hour, and you would have to call this pretty much winter because it's snowing and there's several inches of snow on the ground. Behind me is my RV. And even though the conditions are what I just told you, it's a comfortable 60 degrees plus inside the RV, and the water's hooked up, the electricity's hooked up, we got plenty of propane, and the water is running, nothing's frozen, the tanks are not frozen. And I'm very confident that it will stay that way, even if the temperature gets lower and the winds pick up. Now, I'm going to tell you what I did to accomplish this feat. Not necessarily that it'll work for you or am I recommending it, but I always wanted to be able to RV during the winter, even if the RVing was right in my own driveway, which is what this is. When the weather's a little nicer, I'm going to show you exactly what I did in order to get to this state where it's 16 degrees out and everything's working inside and it's very comfortable to RV in the winter and in the snow. Well, welcome, and I want to start this video off with a little bit of an introduction because this is a long video, as you probably already know, and I commend you for having the bravery to watch it, especially if you watch it all the way through. But I wanted to lay out a little bit what went into this. I've been shooting segments for this for over a year now, and basically I've been developing the systems that I have to have in place for the same amount of time and refining them and making sure they're working right. The first thing I want to talk about, or I will be talking about, is terminology, which is basically what I mean by winterizing, winterproofing, and weatherproofing, and the various things that I call it throughout the video, so you know where I'm trying to get to. And then the electrical considerations, because you want to take full advantage of whatever power you have available in order to help with keeping things cozy and warm and unfrozen. And then some sort of methodology for keeping the wind from blowing underneath your RV and sucking the heat out of it. And that's where skirting comes in. So that'll be the next portion that we talk about. And then in addition to that, talking about additions, modifications, and accessories that you might add to your RV, again, in order to make winter camping a pleasurable and warm and ice-free experience. And then finally, monitoring everything, because lots of times, especially when you're winter camping in your own driveway, you're not in the RV all the time, and but you need to know what's going on inside all the time, temperature-wise, power-wise, and just in general keeping tabs on everywhere in and around the RV. And finally, like I mentioned, I've been shooting these segments for over a year and refining the systems for over a year. So I just want to stress the fact that if you're planning to do some winterproofing and winter camping in your RV, make sure you start months ahead of time doing the things that you need to get in place before the cold weather sets in. Okay, so here we go. Winterproofing your RV for winter camping. Okay, before we get started here, I just wanted to clarify something. I've been using the term winterizing your RV for what I've been doing the last few months up and through this freezing winter. And that's not typically what winterizing your RV is. Mostly winterizing your RV means flushing out the water lines or blowing out the water lines or adding antifreeze to the water, or things like that, so that when you are not using your RV during the winter, nothing freezes or nothing goes wrong. But I am preparing to use the RV during the winter, either for an RV camping trip or, in my case, just right here in my driveway. And so maybe it should be called winterproofing or weatherizing. I'm not really sure. But at any rate, that's the distinction between what is typically known as winterizing your RV and what I'm doing. Now, there are electrical considerations not only when you're wanting to winterproof your RV, but if you just want to, in general, plug in your RV in your own driveway, it's nice to have a dedicated circuit for that purpose. Now, in my case, the RV runs off of a 30 amp circuit. And so what I did was have a dedicated 30 amp circuit installed. I actually installed it myself, but I would recommend you have an experienced electrician install it for you. Anyway, I got a 30 amp circuit breaker, and then ran the 3-conductor wire that's capable of easily handling 30 amps, and ran it out to close to the garage door, and put in the 3-prong 30 amp socket right in there. And you'll see that I also have plugged into it a power defender, it's called, which just makes sure the power is clean going into the RV. And something that I'll mention and show you a little later, that little device right here. So that was an early step also to get a nice dedicated 30 amp circuit ready. So when it comes to winter RVing, I always thought that it would be nice to have full running water, a so-called city water source, rather than relying on the water that was in my freshwater tank, or worse yet, water jugs that I kept inside the heated RV. So that starts with making sure that you've got a winterproof or ice-proof water supply. And for me, that starts inside my messy garage here. And if we take a look down there at the, well, that's kind of a mess too. But beneath there somewhere is a PVC pipe that's coming from the laundry room, and it runs all along this wall. And again, excuse my somewhat cluttered garage. And clear along this wall and comes out on that spigot right there. And that is the source of water that I use for the RV. So in order to use that all winter, what I did was I wrapped the PVC pipe in insulation and ran heater tape all along it. Now the insulation is this kind of thing, so you can see that the hose would fit in there. It wraps around and it's easy to seal it up. And then the heater tape just runs along the length of the hose, and I have it plugged into an outlet inside here. And so that, in a nutshell, takes care of getting non-frozen water to the spigot here. And because this garage is uninsulated, I needed to do that. And unheated, I should say, actually. But it doesn't very often get below freezing, but it certainly can. So we needed to do that first before anything else. Okay, so continuing on the subject of winterproofing your water supply, let's step over here and take a look at this weird-looking thing. You may recall that we used insulation and heater tape on the line that goes through our uninsulated garage, and this is what's on the other side of it. This is the spigot that is on the wall here, but of course I have it wrapped in insulating material and held in place with the Velcro strapping, but underneath there is the spigot, also a pressure gauge that I have here, and this is the heater tape that's wrapped all around it, and then the insulation helps keep the heat from the heater tape inside, so that everything stays nice and cozy warm, or relatively speaking. And then these are the hoses that run from the spigot out to the RV. And I say hoses because there are two of them, because I have a fair amount of distance to cover. And in order to do that, I have to use two hoses. Now, as you can see, it runs underneath the RV here at this point, because I have to go under the RV some, because the hoses just aren't long enough to go all the way around. But I wanted to show you these guys right here, because these are important. There's two hoses, and the plug ends come out. This one comes out from here, and this one comes out from here, and then they both plug in to an outlet underneath there, which I'll show you later. But the important thing is that if you're running heater tapes, and the hoses that have heater tapes on them go underneath the RV, which is somewhat protected temperature-wise, you may run into problems like I did, because these need to be out in the cold, so they'll know when to turn on the heater tape. And at one point I had these routed in sort of a way that it was difficult to get them outside the outside from under the RV, and I believe that at one point the hoses froze up because the heater tapes didn't know it was cold enough to turn them on. Now, I'm coming back over here to show you on this side of the RV, the hose exits the underneath of the RV and comes along here, and of course this is the second hose that comes into where it hooks into the RV, which is right down there. Now, this also is the non-plugged in end of the heater tape, and I have wrapped it around all the water, sources here. So, and then again covered it at least partially with some insulating material, so that that helps keep things from freezing. Now, I'll show you one other thing I have in here. That is an incandescent trouble light, basically, that I've wired in here, and right there is a temperature sensing device that will turn on the circuit when the temperature drops below a certain area. So works kind of like heater tape, except for it's just a 60 watt bulb or whatever that will help keep this space warm in the event that it gets really cold outside. But this space, just so you know, is somewhat protected just by having the heat on inside the RV, and but that light, I just wanted to show you that there's no plug in there, so I have it plugged into an extension cord here, which runs under, which I'll show you. I'll show you in a bit. But in a nutshell, that completes basically the protection on the exterior for running all the your water supply to your RV. Okay, so these big old extension cords are for running the space heater that's underneath here, and for running the heater tape for the hoses, and also that trouble light that I showed you where the water supply comes into the RV as a heater assistant, is also plugged into one of these guys. And they're big and yellow because, well, that's the color that they came in. But they're really heavy duty. In other words, I'm pulling a lot of wattage through here, and they always say, "Oh, never use a space heater with a extension cord." Well, if you have a heavy enough extension cord, you can do that, and that's what I do here in a few places. So I want to take a few minutes to talk about the electrical systems and everything that's involved here. And one is the fact that I have a space heater underneath the RV, and some people might not be comfortable with doing that at all. And in fact, I don't know if it's even necessary, but since it's a standalone trailer, there's no gas fumes or anything down there, and because I'm using heavy-duty extension cords and waterproof boxes wherever something plugs into something else, I was pretty comfortable with having all that stuff underneath the RV. There again, I can't say that I recommend you do the same thing, but just make sure that you're comfortable with doing that if you decide to go that route. Now, as far as the other circuit breakers go, the ones that are here in the RV, I've also had some questions about their sensitivity and their accuracy, because I had one in there that is for the circuits that the space heater is plugged into, and every once in a while it would pop, and if I reset it, it wouldn't pop again right away. So it made sense to me that was just a momentary blip that would cause the breaker to pop, but I wasn't really overtaxing the circuit, in general. So what I ended up doing is I took that, what I think was a 15 amp circuit breaker, and replaced it with a 20 amp. And since I was almost 100% sure that it was just a momentary pop, because it only happened every once in a while, I thought it was safe to put in a 20 amp, and that resolved the issue completely. Similarly, there's a breaker back here for the entire electrical system. That's a 30 amp, and there again, every once in a while that thing would pop, and if I reset it, it wouldn't pop again, and wouldn't pop again for, days at a time sometimes. So I decided that, again, that was just a momentary blip or a little oversensitivity of the circuit breaker, and so I bumped that one up about 5 amps as well and replaced it. And it's been fine ever since. Now, those are things that I would definitely not recommend you doing, but I wanted to let you know that I came up with those issues and those problems, and that's how I resolved it. So one of the first things you're going to want to consider if you're going to winterize or winterproof your RV is some sort of skirting. And skirting is nothing more than something that goes between the bottom of your RV and the ground to stop airflow, because you want to retain as much warm air as possible and not have sub-freezing single-digit air blowing underneath there to suck away the warmth from inside your RV. All right, first of all, there are loads of ways to skirt your RV. Anything from sticking hay bales underneath there to pink styrene extruded insulation panels to plywood, or what a lot of people choose is sort of a rubberized material that's attached to the bottom of your RV and drapes down over it. Now, my solution to this is air skirts, as you can see by the logo there, which are large inflatable tubes that you inflate underneath the RV, and with the exception of that area there, which is exceedingly ugly, and I'll explain later why. They look pretty good, especially if you get the wheel covers, which also help, block the wind from blowing through. They also offer quite a bit of insulation because they're so big around, and all that air in them actually insulates the cold outside from underneath your RV. Another reason I went with these in hindsight is because I had heard and found out firsthand that the support for these guys is great. Jim at Air Skirts, he just is very responsive to any issues you have, and even if it's the slightest possibility that it's due to the air skirts themselves, he takes care of it. And he even replaced a couple of mine, even though I think it was my fault that I had caused one to have a leak or two. Anyway, so back to my ugly spot here. And by the way, this is part of the reason I say start early, because I think I'm going to actually change my configuration the next time I get a chance. But right here are my stabilizing jacks, motorized stabilizing jacks, and that made it difficult to get the air tubes to, come together and form a nice seal. So I had to use some buffer pillows, which is exactly what they're for, to put in here. But then I also, even though you don't really need to do this, or you may not need to do this, I wanted to fill in every single little air gap there was that I could, and that's where these ugly pieces of foam come in. Now, that's not my final solution. That's just what I did in a pinch to block everything. And I'll tell you that the main idea is, of course, to keep the air underneath the RV above freezing. so that hopefully that would keep anything that's close to the bottom of the RV from freezing. But I have had times where the underneath gets below freezing and still I don't get anything to freeze up underneath. Now part of that could be because this particular RV has an insulated bottom, which is why it says extended season camping. Notice that it doesn't say winter camping or sub-freezing camping. You can see that there is snow on the RV stairs. And let's go inside and just experience how lovely it is in here. You can see I have a space heater in here. That's part of my winterproofing, as they say. And you can't feel it, but it is absolutely delightful in here. 60 some degrees, which is what we keep it at as the default, to help with keeping things thawed out, etc. And as you can see here, the water is running perfectly, both cold and hot. And the bathroom sink too. Even though it's below freezing outside, and I guess I don't need to show you the shower head, but I will show you this to get the there we go. Sorry about that. This is a pillow made by Air Skirts, and it's hard to see, but it's a clear pillow, fully inflated, and it's sitting inside the skylight that's here on the in the shower. And of course what that does is insulate the cold air that could come in through this area. It just has a big old layer of insulation there. And there's another one in the vent over the bedroom, and I thought there was one more someplace else, but I neglected to show you the vent in the bathroom itself. So obviously if we need to use those vents, we would take those out, but since we don't, they stay in there. So that's a look around this warm and cozy RV, even though it's literally freezing outside, and actually it was freezing below the RV itself, and nothing froze up, so that's a really great sign. All right, so now you know all there is to know about Air Skirts and the accessories that come along with them. So I don't really know how close any water lines are to the bottom of that insulation layer that's underneath this particular RV, or how much insulation there is. But I just thought, regardless, I'd go with the Air Skirts and some other things to help keep that space as warm as possible. Hey, I wanted to do kind of a late season update on my Air Skirts, and particularly the Air Skirt configuration that I'm using under the RV. Now, if you remember, I had kind of a problem area down here, and that was right in here where the power stabilizer jacks live. Now there's a set on the front, and there's a set on the back, and if you remember before, I had all kinds of buffer pillows and padding and everything else jammed into the gaps there because I couldn't get the end air tubes in tight against the the jacks when they're extended. And I just sort of had an idea, what if I don't use the stabilizing jacks, just retract them back up into the body, and then that would allow me to get these end air tubes back up against the ones that go along the bottom here, like under the stairs and under the other side and behind the wheels. And as you can see, now everything is pretty much sealed off, and I don't have any gaps, at least gaps that require big pieces of foam or what you call it, buffer pillows to fill in. So I think this is going to be a great solution here. You can see the motor for the jacks, but the jacks themselves are tucked way up under, and so they're not in the way at all. Now I may end up putting a buffer pillow up here just because that's exposed metal, which would conduct cold back in, and I may do some sort of small pillows or pieces of dark colored insulation, flexible foam to really seal things off, but I think this is a much better solution, and so far I can't even tell the difference when we're walking inside and moving about the RV, that it's less stable or bouncy or anything like that. So I think this is a late season adjustment. And that's another reason why I say, give yourself lots of time to get this figured out so that you have the optimum systems in place. But I think we're in good shape, and this is the way I'm going to go next season, because winter's actually long gone, although it kind of feels like it today. Anyway, wanted to give you that quick update on the air skirts part. So there you have my solution to skirting. So we're in the RV right now, and I wanted to show you a couple of devices, systems, items that I have in place to assist with the winterproofing of your RV. And I want to start with this guy right down here, which is a space heater. And I have it positioned back here so that it blows air into this corner of the RV, because that's where the kitchen sink and faucet is, the bathroom sink and faucet is, and the shower. So we got water lines, and of course the toilet too, all of which are fed by water lines that we want to keep thawed out at all times. So with this guy on, that helps keep this corner in particular heated up without actually using up propane. And if it's really cold, what I'll do is I'll just open up the cabinets wherever there are water lines, so that the heat can get back in there. Now, the other reason that I have it back here is because I also want to have the propane furnace available in case it's needed. And the thermostat for the propane furnace is up here by the front door in the front bedroom, even though the furnace itself is right back down there underneath the kitchen sink. So when it's cold enough that having this guy set at 65 degrees doesn't keep that end of the RV up to 65 degrees, then the propane furnace will kick in once it gets down to 60 degrees or below. And so not only will that help keep the interior of the RV up to where it needs to be, but also it particularly hits the water lines because the furnace is back in that corner. All right, I just wanted to mention one other accessory that definitely could come in handy if you're trying to do winter camping. Now, you can see that right now I'm in the midst of doing work over in this corner, and in fact, I have pulled out the built-in propane furnace, which you can imagine is pretty critical for winter camping. And you never know when that thing might go out on you, so you want to be prepared, and this is how I got prepared for that. Or actually, this is what I got when my furnace went out on me, and that's a indoor safe standalone propane furnace. And the reason for that in particular is because you want to be able to use electricity and propane to keep things warm in here, so that if one or the other goes out, you still get warmth. So I needed to have a propane heat source in case I lose electricity for an extended period of time. All right, so while we're still in wintry weather around here, I wanted to show you one of the things I did early on. Let me switch around here. As part of the winterizing. Now, it might be a little hard to see, but on top of our slide out, there is an awning that rolls out with the slide out, and you can see it kind of blowing in the wind a little bit there. If I can get the camera aimed up. I'm still learning how to use this camera. You can see it blowing in the wind there, and you can also see that it's bowed down, and that's because it's on top of it is the snow and ice from the most recent storm, and so that's actually why I bought and installed that, is because it keeps any ice or snow from forming on the top of your slide out, so that you don't have to chip or clean that off before pulling your slide out back in. So I actually did that pretty early on, and it's working just the way it's supposed to. So that was also fairly expensive addition, but well worth it, I think. As I mentioned, monitoring temperatures is critical for winterproofing systems, and that's where this guy comes in. And it is a thermometer, but it also takes 3 other remote wireless thermometers as input as well. So on the bottom there is the ambient temperature, and on the top there it cycles through the 3 remote sensors that I have out there, one of which is under the RV, one of which is just outside the RV attached to the frame, and the other is in the service area where the where the water comes in, and all those are critical to know what the temperature is at any given moment. Then I usually keep that inside with me during the winter, which means I still need something to tell me what the temperature is inside the RV itself, because that ambient temperature will just tell me wherever the thermometer is. But that's where this guy comes in. It's another wireless thermometer, and the display for that is up by my desk, so I always know at a glance what the temperature is inside the RV, under the RV, outside the RV, and in the service area of the RV. Another thing that's important in winterproofing your RV is knowing what's going on inside your RV at all times, and especially if it's just parked in your driveway like we are. Most of the time I'm not in the RV, but I still want to know what the temperature's doing, what the power's doing, and everything. So I've got a few things in place that help me with that, and I'm going to start with showing you this, which is a Verizon wireless internet gateway, and it is plugged into a UPS, uninterruptible power supply, so that if we lose power to the RV, the internet gateway is still up. We also use that internet gateway for just in general internet access when we're in the RV and remote sites and stuff like that. For all of our devices that speak in text messages, that's crucial. And one of those devices is right there, and it doesn't look like much, but it's just plugged into the an outlet, and if the power is interrupted to that outlet, it actually sends a text message. And because the gateway will still be up even if the power goes out for at least a few minutes, it can send something. This is a similar device, except for this one has a temperature probe, which I have down by the water line in the by the toilet there, so that if the water temperature starts getting into a dangerous or the air temperature gets to a dangerous range, it will also send a text message as well as an email to advise me of that stuff. So those are the two main internet speaking monitors that we have. Oh, and by the way, the temperature sensor switch there that turns on and off this incandescent light also sends me emails or text messages when it gets activated. So that's another internet connected device. So I wanted to show you another device here that doesn't necessarily come under the heading of winterproofing your RV, but it certainly can come in handy during the winter because it's something that helps determine the level of the propane in your tank. And all you do with this little device here, there you got it, is you press this up against the outside of the tank, and if it comes up and beeps red, that means there's no propane on the other side. And so you just keep doing that, and obviously there's no propane in my hand, so I guess it's working right. But you start at the bottom and work your way up, and hopefully towards the bottom you're getting green indicators, and then as it comes up, the level at which you start getting red indicators tells you exactly where the propane is in the tank. And the only caveat to this guy is that a lot of things can interfere with it detecting the propane. So you kind of have to do lots of readings over and over again, but eventually you get a pretty good idea of what the level is at. And it also has a built-in flashlight, so isn't that cool? So, nice little device. All right, well, the last of the monitoring devices I want to show you, I actually showed you a long time ago, but I didn't explain it. And that is a power monitor that's right here plugged into where the RV gets all its power, which is, of course, this 30 amp circuit that I showed you earlier. and this, as you might recall, is just kind of cleans the power going to the RV. And then this little device here, it keeps track of various things like how much amperage we're pulling, how much voltage we're pulling, the wattage that we're pulling, and also the cumulative kilowatts. And you can see that on the screen, that all those things are monitored, and as long as I'm in Bluetooth range, I can get those statistics at any time. You can also actually make it so that it sends you notices if the parameters fall outside the range that you want them to be, but I haven't really needed to do that for anything. And it's also only effective when you're in Bluetooth range of that device itself. So anyway, but that's a handy monitoring device just to tell you what's going on power-wise in the RV. All right, another thing to know about winterizing your RV or winterproofing your RV is that you got to start months ahead of freezing temperatures, because you got to work out all the kinks and get comfortable with the systems that you put in place and make sure they're in the right places and everything's in the right places in order for you to have the maximum protection from winter's onslaught, and so you can just enjoy your winter RVing. So start months ahead of time if you can. All right, so winterizing or winterproofing your RV for winter camping. This is the conclusion. As you can see behind me, the RV is in a snowstorm, if a mild one, and shrouded with snow, and we have winter temperatures out here, and but it's cozy, warm inside, and everything is working, as you can see from the footprints down below here. We've been in and out of it today, and enjoying the cozy warmth inside, and I even put up Christmas lights. I don't know how well you can see those, but just to make the point that we are winter camping ready. So that is probably going to do it. If I can get myself squared away here with the video. I'll make the usual YouTube disclaimer. I'm not a professional. I don't recommend you do what I did to winterproof my RV, but I'm just showing you what I did and how I got there, and it worked pretty well for me. So if you want to do some winter camping in your camper, I wish you all kinds of luck, and I hope it works out as well for you as so far it has for me. So winterproofing your RV for winter camping, and that concludes this video.